saw this. There was a news article that the Chiefs, I think Wednesday, had a scare because they had a barber in cutting the player's hair who tested positive while he was cutting their hair. And I'm in the late night saying they're wearing helmets at the game. What do they need to cut their hair for? And they showed the center, and they pulled the barber out mid haircut. The center half of his head is shaved, the other half has his regular hair on it. And they just stopped. I thought that was funny.
That is
Okay,
funny.
okay, we're going to record. Let me tell you what this is about and why we're here. I've heard a few of you have had some problems getting offers accepted as of late, or you have to compete against multiple offers. So, one, I wanted to give you a little bit of appreciation, and then I wanted to give you a couple of stats. And then I'm going to ask the panel to jump in and start telling us what they do to get them accepted or not. So, Wichita has 2,300 agents and 861 listings today. That means basically on the market, we have one home listed for every 2.5 agents. No wonder you're racing out to show things. And I didn't even go into price ranges yet. I did in price ranges a little bit later. In Kansas City, however, they have 13,000 agents and 2,700 active listings, or one active listing for every nearly 5 agents. A lot worse off than we are. I mean, really. I'm glad we don't have to compete with one, that many agents, and two, that few listings per agent. But then it made me wonder if I could figure out in our MLS in the last quarter only, in the $200,000 price range, from the stats that I can pull up, it looks like we are offering on average 5% over asking price, or roughly $10,000 at a $200,000 home.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Absolutely.
Is that what is closing? Is that what it closes
Yes.
at 5% over asking?
Yes.
Okay, so what is happening then is houses are appraising for roughly 5% over.
They are appraising for
Most
5% over, and we don't know what the agreements are on,
Right.
you know, do I pay the cash difference or not? But I
Right.
can find numbers on sold price versus list price.
Right.
I don't know what the price range in Kansas City is compared to ours. They tell me that right now they have escalation clauses out the wazoo, 15,000 over asking price. You pay the difference between appraisal price and asking price if it doesn't appraise, things like that. But interestingly today, you know, timing is everything. USA Today has a very long article today on the housing bubble and are we on a housing bubble in the United States? And a couple of things I pulled out of there that I thought was interesting. While Wichita didn't come into this, oddly enough, I know, shocking, Kansas City came into the house prices. And they do have a map of the overall state, and are they getting high or low and so on. Kansas City house prices are 9% higher than they were last year. The highest in the United States is San Jose, California at 14.2%. The lowest is San Antonio at 4.9%. I think we're going to fall in close to that 4.9 to maybe 8% would be my guess. I haven't run the numbers. But if it's all going up, we're getting houses to appraise. So we should be a little bit less scared of riding over the price. But there's one other stat I pulled out of that article that I wanted to share with you. Rent changes year over year. They did not pull rent from anywhere in the United States or in Kansas, but the highest rent in the United States year over year increase is Newark, New Jersey. It went up 30%.
Holy Toledo.
Oh, wait a minute. The lowest rent in the United States is in San Francisco that is at minus 24%. Think about the spread in that number of over 30% increase to minus 24% decrease. That's a 50% spread. That's an incredible number. I wish we had a good way to track it in Kansas, but we may find that some of the investors are dropping out or looking for really hot markets like Newark, or you may find that negotiating rent is cheaper than you think. I saw in Denver, my daughter's thinking about negotiating in Denver, and it's dropped down 7% in Denver. It's minus 7%. So we have to think about that in terms of housing costs and what people are doing and where the market is going, and can we sell other houses and should they not rent and things like that as we move forward. So those are my stats. I hope you found something in there useful. Which of the three of you would like to start and say, this is what I'm doing now, and this seems to be working pretty well for me? Okay, Dixie, you're first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go, Dixie.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So I have like 9 buyers right now. None of them obviously have gotten an offer accepted. The only one I've gotten accepted got accepted with a letter. And the listing agent told me that the seller, we were not the highest price, but the seller really enjoyed our letter and was pleased that a family would be getting the house that loved the home. So that's the only successful thing I have to say about getting one accepted. The things that I've tried to do is I've gotten sellers' homes rented so that they wouldn't have to be contingent upon the successful closing of their home. And also they could be then flexible on their closing date. But it hasn't helped anything. But those are the things that I have done. So I'm now having my buyers write letters every time.
You bring up an interesting point, and I would like to comment on that. Investors think a piece of property is something that you make money from. Homeowners think piece of property is an emotional decision where I'm going to raise my family, who gets it next, and so on. I totally agree with the letter idea, and I think that we have to remember some, maybe even most, but not all homeowners don't want their house to go just for the top line dollar. If they're getting close to the same price, they want to make sure who's moving in is somebody that will care for their home in the same fashion the old people do. So make that letter very emotional appeal to people. Does anybody else want to comment on that letter?
I do have one more thing to say about the letter.
Please.
I had a listing that we had 7 offers the first time, and my people took their offer that was not the highest, it was second to the highest, but because the lender was local and they had more money to put down. So I had told them, I have a form that says if we accept your offer, you will sign this document that says you will pay the difference if the house doesn't appraise between the price that we're getting and the price that it appraises at. And the agent did sign it. It was the agent that was actually the seller, which was another selling point to the buyer was the buyer's agent. And that was another selling point to my seller. And then they picked it apart and we went back on the market and got 9 offers. And again, when we went through everything, we looked at more than just the price, but those people, they didn't care about any of the letters. They wanted what they thought would be the easiest and the surest thing to close so that they could close on theirs.
What I would like to add to what she just shared, and this kind of ties in with the letter and what type of offers you're getting is, I explain this both to my buyers and my sellers. It's not always all about price. It's about the terms. What kind of terms do you have in the contract? If you have 2 offers that come in that are high, maybe they're $2,000 or $3,000 apart. One of them is a VA loan, the other one is a conventional or even cash. Which one are they going to go with? So what I've been explaining to my buyers is make it as a clean contract as possible. And what I mean by that is don't ask for closing costs if you can. Make it as easy and as simple as possible for the sellers to take. And those terms matter. I'm talking about closing date. I'm talking about when you're going to have or get your inspections done, who the lender is, like Dixie just talked about. All those things come into play. I had a seller not too long ago decide to go with one contract over the other, and there was about $1,000 to $2,000 difference. And he went with a lower contract just because it was a VA buyer. The reason he went with the VA buyer is because he was a veteran also. So I believe that terms mean something. And, with the letter that Dixie was talking about and the terms that you put in an agreement, you need to have your buyers prepared to make it as clean as a contract as possible, almost to the point where you're giving away your kids in order to get the house.
There is an awful lot of talk on the national boards about the letter being a possible fair housing violation. It has been a discussion in many of the groups that I belong to, and apparently there is currently a huge investigation that just broke in Arizona in Mesa, Arizona, about those letters being utilized for fair housing discrimination. When I used to write the letters, I used to put, recommend to my buyers that they put a picture of themselves, the dog, whatever it is, their kids, whatever it was, to pull on the emotional heartstrings of the seller. And to talk about the benefits, what they love about the house, why they want to buy it, their history, things like that, so that the seller would get emotionally invested in them. Now I have, as a result of the things that I'm reading online, I have eliminated photos unless they have an animal. If they have a pet of some kind, I tell them to include a picture of their pet. Otherwise, if they want to include graphics on the letter, to do something like a picture of the house that they took, or a picture of where they're living now, or if they have, like I had a client who had a car that he absolutely loved. They wrote the whole letter with some help. We wrote the whole letter about how he's buying the house for the car, that the garage, his car needed a new home, and lucky enough, he gets a bathroom and a kitchen that he really loves. And that got us the house. I mean, it worked out well, and the seller enjoyed that because he was a car guy also. But you need to be very careful when you're sending those letters. And the other thing is, we cannot, because the letter is not made a part of the agreement, it's not made a part of the contract, unless you write in paragraph 32, see attached letter from the buyer, the listing agent has no obligation or requirement to show that to the seller. And there are listing agents across the nation that absolutely refuse to show them to the seller, because in their mind, this is a business decision and emotion shouldn't come into it.
Mhm.
I always put it in paragraph 32.
Me too.
So Brenda, since you're going to become our letter expert, do you coach your buyers to write a letter before they look at the house, or do you wait until they find the house that they want to buy and write it?
When they find the house they want to buy, because the offer is all money. The offer is all about money, terms, stuff. The only way that you can convey emotion to the seller is in that letter that you write. When a buyer finds a house that they want, they buy on emotion. They justify with facts, but they buy on emotion. They can't fabricate that emotion before they actually have it.
Good point.
And I can tell you that I also generally, if they're not good at putting a noun, a verb, and an adjective together to make a sentence, I will help them write that letter to convey their thoughts.
And I send them a clip from Schoolhouse Rock about what an adjective is.
And Brenda brings up a great point in regards to two great points in regards to putting it in the miscellaneous that make sure that that those letters are presented to the sellers. That's the first point. The second point is when you are working with your buyers to write that letter, all you have to do when it comes to fair housing is think about the protective classes.
Mhm.
The protected classes, if they say anything in there about anything in regards to the different types of people, who they are, who, you know, you can't include that. That's what's going to get you in trouble. And so if they say that they're moving out of an area that has a high crime rate, okay, they can say that, because that is not, criminals are not a protected class. But if they are saying that they're wanting to move out of an area of a certain type of people, no, you can't tell them, do not include that. Don't include it.
Let me ask Dixie this, and then we'll have the other two answer it as well. So Dixie, when you're talking, you said that you made an offer that talked about they could rent their house, it would be contingent and so on. Do you actually write all of that into the offer, or are there things that you communicate directly to the agent and hope they pass them on? Lance said something about the flexible closing dates and things. I'm just looking to see how you guys document or get that information to the seller.
So I write in there, this offer is not contingent upon the sale of the buyer's home, and buyer is flexible with closing dates.
Okay.
I don't tell them all that we have a lease on theirs, and I just make sure that before that I already talked to the lender. Will they get approved? I need a pre-approval saying that it doesn't have to be a contingent. And then I have a lease signed in hand for that seller, for their buyer, so that I can present all of it if I need to.
Okay. Lance, you're on my screen next. That's why I went to Lance.
Nice. I'm pretty much along the lines of what Dixie was saying. I don't really, I try to, like I said, I try to keep the contract as clean as possible and make it as most receptive, because a lot of my thoughts are that a lot of agents out there are throwing offers out there. Ray just had one recently that was $12,000 over list price. And my thought on that was, okay, we're seeing it, all of us are seeing this, and maybe we are doing it ourselves. We're just throwing numbers out there in hopes that they will take our contract because we're the highest price, regardless of whether it's going to appraise or not. And so I just simply prepare my buyers by telling them, what are you willing to pay for this? What's the house value? What are you willing to pay for it so you don't lose it? And then if they tell me that I've done my due diligence if I'm representing them, if I've done my due diligence, I've done a CMA on the house that they're purchasing. And if it's outside that CMA, then we have that conversation. Are you prepared to pay the difference? Because it probably will not appraise at that. So it's for me, it's all about preparing your buyers.
Yeah. I agree.
Chris, Brenda, you're up.
Put me in, coach.
You're in. I always call the agent or contact the agent in some way and try and find out what's most important to the seller, because that means everything. And I have had 2 instances very recently where my buyer was tired of being the bridesmaid instead of the bride and just offered, against my judgment, that crazy prices, and said, we'll work it out in the appraisal. I've been reading everything, and we'll just work it out after the appraisal. And the offers didn't get accepted because the agent on the other end knew the house was never going to appraise for that.
Yep.
So they bailed on ours and took one that was less. And that's why I made the distinction this morning when you and I were talking, Greg, about did they close at that? Because the one piece of information that none of us have is what the offer started at. Where did the offer begin? What we have at the end is the price that the buyer and seller agreed upon after an appraisal. And we have no idea if that offer was adjusted as a result of an appraisal, or if the buyer paid more than what the property is worth because an appraisal came in different. So I think it's going to screw up our comps long-term
For a while, yeah.
because we have no idea. Up until now, Wichita has been the 3 to 5% steady growth capital of the nation. We have amazingly slow growth that is very stable and very steady. We've seen a 13% growth in the last 12 months. That is just insane.
So Wichita used to be the stable chick you dated. Now he's the hot chick.
That's right. Wichita is now
Awesome.
the bad boy. That's
So on the USA Today, but yeah, we're the hot chick, right? On USA Today, they've got Kansas as a whole. Prices have gone up 6.6%, and the average price home in Kansas is 164. Now, obviously, Wichita's higher and so on, but I don't know that we're really way outside the skew yet compared to the rest of the country. Not saying that we aren't messed up, but compared to the rest of the country. And I don't want to be the only one talking here. So anybody out there have questions or comments for our panel? Let's
So
open
I've
up the
got a couple more-
microphones.
I got a couple of things I want to add on to what Brenda just said. Guys, you got to keep in mind, and first and foremost, before I dive into this, Greg and I are working with Fred Samuelson. He's a local appraiser. A lot of you guys are familiar with him. He has agreed to do a class with us in working up numbers and how to do appropriate CMAs, especially if you've got a house that's had a bunch of renovations and so forth, but also to talk about what this crazy market's been doing. And with that being said, to pile on to what Brenda just said, you guys have to remember, when we're doing our CMAs, whether it's for our sellers or our buyers, it doesn't matter. When you're doing a CMA, there isn't anything in that listing that shows that a buyer paid above and beyond what the house actually appraised for. And that's one of the cornerstones that we have always used when proving our prices. When you go in front of a seller and you're trying to earn their business, you show them what these houses have sold for, and then you see on the listing that it's sold with a conventional loan. There isn't anything in that MLS as to how much it appraised for, how much money they put down. It just says conventional, VA, FHA. We don't know, and so that kind of blows that up a little bit as far as providing the proof. And so my thought on this whole thing is, our market has been like this for a while, and I believe well past 6 months, and I am starting to see appraisals come up higher. I've been talking with other realtors, not just in our office, but with outside our office, and I'm starting to see more numbers or more appraisals come in higher because we have been in this type of market for so long. So I'm hoping that the appraisers are matching with what's going on.
Right. So you're muted, Greg.
I was just going to say, who has questions and comments? So go.
I have a comment. So far, obviously the name of the class was, how can we help get the thing? So far the suggestions we have are call the people and find out what their terms are, right?
what's most important.
And what's most important. So has anybody using escalation clauses? Is anybody dealing with going way over and having pre-approval problems, like people wanting their pre-approval changed? So those are the questions that I have, is, to talk about a few more of what we're actually doing with that. Is anybody using escalation clauses or language that you put in a contract for over, $10,000, $20,000 over asking?
I'm going to jump in on this question. I have been approached by my buyers about escalation clauses. They've heard about it. They've talked to other people about it. And I give them that option, but really try to advise them not to do it. I look at them and say, again, what is the house worth to you? If you feel if it's priced at $220,000 and you think you'd be willing to pay up to $230,000 or $240,000 for it, okay, are you going to pay the difference? Because an escalation clause, what if you're not the only escalation clause? Now you're in a bidding war, and the sellers are going to start looking at the terms. And so I've even gone as far as my sellers, advising my sellers, and my sellers are telling me, tell the buyer's agents we don't want escalation clauses, because if they're willing to cap it off at 230, and that's what their offer should be. And yep, I completely agree. So I try not to do the escalation clause as a whole. And Brenda and I had a conversation yesterday. We were helping Ray out with the situation in which there's language you can put in your miscellaneous paragraph stating that the buyer will have basically the difference between the appraisal amount and the contracted price. There's also language that Brenda has drawn up, and we've collaborated on this in the past, where if the buyer or the seller is being asked to pay for some of the closing costs, there's some language you can use in the miscellaneous if the house doesn't appraise, where that amount of closing costs will come down. So there's a number of different ways you can do it. And I just say, I use the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. You know,
Most everyone.
that's how I try to do it.
Lance kisses everybody I know. My broker comment is, if you're doing an escalation clause, as a broker, I see that as one, revealing what your buyer is willing to pay, which means you may have violated agency. That's my opinion. That's not a legal opinion. And two, if you told me what the top escalation is, that's what I'm going to counter at. I'm going to ignore all that other crap you put in there.
Yep.
So that's my 2 bits.
One other thing that I do, as soon as my buyers tell me we want to make an offer, I call that agent and I just say, how many offers do you have, if any? What do you have a deadline for any of this stuff? And I just more or less suck up to the agent and make sure that they want to work with me, not that any other people, and let them know how nice I am.
You bring up a point. Let me ask a question to the panel. When Brady bought her house, first day on the market, we submitted an offer. Seller said, I'm going to wait 7 days before I evaluate any offers. Are people running into that, or are people pretty much taking it when you deliver?
The only one I've had that really was annoying was Marie's deal. She had 21 offers. And her seller literally told her, I am sitting across the street enjoying the circus, and I'm going to wait and see how many we get. And they got 21 offers. And that one was annoying. Most people are saying, okay, this is getting ridiculous. We've already got 5 or however many. We're going to go ahead and shut it off at 8 o'clock tonight. We'll make a decision by tomorrow afternoon. That's kind of what the average is, what I'm hearing.
The other thing that you can also do, along with what Dixie is saying, is, and this is a question for Greg and Chris, is when you write something in the miscellaneous saying a buyer respectfully requests an answer within 24 hours, whatever the case may be, that really, from what I've understood, that's not really enforceable, because I mean, okay, the terms are in there, so okay. So if the seller doesn't respond within 24 hours, what are you going to do? I mean, an offer is not something, it's just an offer. It's not a contract. So
that's because
I
it was
had
written
ones-
poorly.
Yeah, it was.
If you write in there, this offer is good until February 6th. If not responded to or accepted by then, offer is withdrawn.
yes.
That is enforceable.
I had one that we wrote, buyer respectfully requested a response by 5 p.m. tomorrow, and put the date. And the agent called me back and said, so if we don't respond, your contract is null and void.
Mhm.
And they weren't going to respond. So then I told my buyers, let's strike that from there. But that's
Yeah.
how some people are reading it, is that, okay, if I don't respond to you, then I'm not even going to include yours with all this group, because yours is no longer enforceable.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in as a broker again. I hate the term buyer respectfully request, because I can sign anything you respectfully request and not deliver on it. You can request all day long. So I like very firm terms. Seller shall.
Yeah.
Now, buyer will withdraw. Those kind of things, because those are enforceable. But I also understand exactly what Dixie is saying. When you're presenting an offer, you very much want the seller not to be offended. And the
Correct.
respectfully request is a way to try to soften that. To me, I like what Brenda said. Call the other agent first and find out what is important, find out information about how many offers and so on, as Dixie said, so that you can be addressing those with your offer instead of afterwards trying to figure it out.
With that being said, Greg, I'm gonna push this over. It spills over a little bit. This conversation, this topic actually spills over onto the sellers too. So when you are taking a listing and you know that this thing is going to be a hot commodity and you're going to have tons of offers, you better be having that discussion with your sellers right up front. How do you want to handle the offers? Because per our laws, you can either tell everyone you got multiple offers or you tell no one. It's one or the other. You can't cherry pick. So you need to have that conversation with your sellers right up front. So when Dixie does call you and say, do you have other offers? What kind of terms, et cetera, you can answer that question comfortably. Just be prepared. Have your sellers prepared for this.
Okay, does anyone else have questions or comments? Does our panel have their last words? Go ahead, Erica.
Hey, I've advised my sellers that because of the market and, I think I'm probably going to get multiple offers. I just advise them, can we just agree to plan on meeting at the end of the first day? And then if we have any offers, we'll go over them at that point. Because I did run into a situation where my sellers wanted to know anytime they got an offer, and then they accepted the first offer and there were like 4 other showings. So by the time they'd done all that, we got notifications that, hey, we're going to put in an offer. And I said, well, they just accepted another one. So now I just say, let's get through the first day of showings. And if we get offers, we'll look at them that evening, and just don't even plan on me telling you during the day if we've got any. That way, all the people that want to see it on the first day get it. And then we can also look to see how many showings do we have scheduled for the second day, if they want to hold off, or if we need to put it out there that we have multiple offers. And that seems to have worked better.
I have seen people, if they know it's going to be a bidding war, I've seen them put in that they're going to review offers at such and such time on the MLS and the private comments.
Hey, Greg, this is Ray. Since Lance brought it up, I did put that language in the contract that the buyer would pay any difference between contract price and appraised value. And apparently that caused the buyer to rethink it and decide that they withdrew their offer, which was okay because I had no idea where the number came from that they came in with. So, and it made me a little nervous just the way it was done. So anyway, I thought I'd just share that.
Thank you for sharing that. Be careful about specific deals because we have agency issues. But I think it is a good point. Sometimes, I don't know that I've ever done this. I've heard it done that I tell somebody to offer a ridiculous number because the contract says if it comes in under appraisal, we get to renegotiate. And while that is all technically true, it might be shading on the side that Greg wouldn't want to shade to. That's getting a little over that line of are you being truthful, honest? Is it something you can sleep at night if you do? So I have no doubt that the person who made your offer did not do that, but there are people out there who do. And I think it's always wise that we advise our clients appropriately on both sides of that fence. Put the language in to protect you and put the language in to protect the buyer. Yes, Chris?
No, I was just going to say, I think that is a definite strategy. I know more agents than I'd like to say that say that to their buyers. You offer whatever in the hell they want, and it doesn't matter, it's not going to appraise, and then they got to renegotiate. I think the thing that Ray experienced yesterday and what that whole clause does, and that's why the buyer backed out. My guess is that agent told them to do that and they never expected it. So Ray put in the put your money where your mouth is clause.
Yep.
And, you know, he made them say, oh, agent, my agent, what do I do now? They called our bluff. What do I do? You know, so you know, what Ray was saying is the deal may have gone down, but he's wise in saying it's okay going down because it would have went down as soon as the appraisal came in anyway.
Well, I know a little bit more about this deal than that, and I'm pretty sure that's not what happened here, but I can see it happening a lot. And there's some other things
Well,
you don't know about,
whether
but yes,
Whether it's this deal or not, or there's more
Exactly.
backstory that you know or not, that happens all the time.
exactly. I agree.
So it's, you know, that money where your mouth is clause to protect the seller is good, and it'll weed out bad buyers.
You bet. Lance, you have-
Again, you know, basically what we're all talking about are terms. Honestly, I mean, everything that we've discussed, with the exception of the letter, everything is about terms.
Yep.
What are the terms of the contract? All that has to play. It's not just about the price. You know, we're changing by putting that "put your money where your mouth is" comment, putting that in the miscellaneous. That's a term. And so if you have a buyer that absolutely wants this house and is willing to pay out the nose for it, encourage your buyer to put that in there. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if it doesn't appraise for this, we'll pay the difference. Oh, and by the way, here's our proof of funds. I mean, it's make it as clean as possible.
I would agree with Lance. I mean, getting back to what this whole class is about is how do you win the offer? Well, you put your money where your mouth is. That's how you win the offer. You know what I mean? And although it's a strategy they use, that will help win. And I agree with the other part too about, you know, finding out what's important to the seller. Maybe the seller needs a 90-day closing and no one else will do it and you can. Okay, fine, great. So I agree with both those strategies.
Well, my last comment, and I think we should go, so get your last comments ready, panel, if you've got any. My last comment would be that the numbers opened my eyes a little bit today, that the offered price or the listed price and the final sold price is 5% high by the MLS. If I'm looking at that, then that tells me they're probably appraising. The appraisers are looking at the same sold prices we're looking at, so the values are going up. And I believe that maybe we've been underdoing our CMAs just a tad. So I would like Fred to come in and let's talk about that number and see if he can help us figure out how appraisers think. So that's my last two bits. You three?
So it has helped me because I have one specific buyer. We've lost on 7 deals and we have went 10 to 11,000 over on every one. We're looking up to 300. So we're just not quite making enough extra.
Go 5%. You bet.
Yeah.
Chris? Last word?
I don't have, well, you know, I blurbed everything out that I say. I don't have anything in reserve other than I miss you guys. Love you.
Lance, last words?
My last word would be, you know, try to get as much information as possible and keep the terms of the contract or the terms of your offer in mind. The terms, it's not just about price. It is, there's also other things that are involved. And if Dixie, if you've got a buyer, like we were saying, that is willing to pay above and beyond and has the means to do so, start putting that in the miscellaneous, letting the sellers know, hey, we'll pay the difference. So it is about the terms, guys.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.